Yeah, the topic I'd like to present or to talk about is depression and the detection of deception. To give a little background, I'm a doctoral candidate, a PhD candidate at the University of Kassel, and I'm also a psychotherapist in training that might explain this area of interest to me. But beyond that, um, maybe some of you might ask yourselves how this might be a research field of interest. Well, one reason why this topic is of interest to us is that depression is a disorder that is commonly known to have an effect on cognition. It was Beck who proposed that depressed individuals have a negatively distorted view of themselves, the world, and the future. And also, depression has an effect on how we experience social interactions. Both things that have something to do with deception detection in everyday life. And to get to the hypotheses that we arrived at, the research questions, I need to make a little digression. The depressive realism hypothesis is an alternative explanation on the differences between depressed and non-depressed individuals and how they experience the world around them. Alloy and Abramson formulated this hypothesis, and in their first study, they found that in an experiment of evaluation of judgments of contingencies. So in the judgment of contingencies, they found that individuals normally show an illusion of control. So they believe, more so than they actually do, that they have control about a light that is illuminated by pressing a button, or is not illuminated by pressing a button. Well, depressed individuals in these experiments did not show this illusion of control. So Alloy and Abramson concluded that the self-view might not be negatively distorted, but actually be lacking positive distortions, which means that non-depressed individuals have a positively biased view of their abilities, while depressed individuals do not. The depressive realism effect has been investigated in some different areas. There are the judgments of contingency tasks, which I talked about right now, the pressing of a button and the illumination of a light, where the contingency between them varies, and participants are asked to evaluate what they believe, how much they are in control of the illumination of the light. Another area where it was found, and sometimes not, is the self-evaluation of task performance, where participants had to do some kind of task, and after that had to evaluate their performance on this task. Another one was the expectancy of success. A meta-analysis by Moore and Fresco found that whether a depressive realism effects are found or not depends on method factors. It is more often found when it is not a clinical interview that defines depression, but rather a score on a screening sheet. It is also more often found in individuals with mild forms of depression. And Moore and Fresco, the authors of the meta-analysis, also found that there is a lack of a golden standard for realism. Moreover, most investigations deal with the view of self. As I talked about before, depression is supposed to, or individuals with depression are supposed to have negatively distorted views of themselves, the world, meaning their surroundings, and also the future. And these other areas are not that much investigated. Well, here we get to a crossover to the research in deception detection. Alloy and Abramson describe a positivity bias in perception of control and success, which they describe as a protection of self-view. So this positivity bias has this function. It is supposed to protect ourselves from negative self-view. A phenomenon that is often found in investigations in deception detection is the truth bias, that individuals are, of course, more often saying that statements are truth than stating that the statement is a lie. And there are different explanations for why this truth bias is so commonly found. One interpretation or one reason that a possibility for the occurrence of the truth bias is that it might not always be in our best interest to detect lies or even to know whether a person is lying or not. Okay, here are some statements or some further supporting stuff for investigating depressive realism effects in the area of deception detection. Free, in explaining his Ostrich effect, explained that people are sometimes not motivated to learn the truth because it's not in their best interest to do so. As I said before, there are interactional problems associated with depression, which might mean that being suspicious of whether your counterpart is not telling the truth might not have the best effect on social interactions. Lane and DiPaolo investigated the deception detection ability for depressed individuals in a certain kind of deception. Phony reassurances that are meant to enhance social relations within their interest. And they actually found that depressed individuals did more often detect when individuals made reassurances that are not their real opinion into experiments. Also, while negative mood is not the only symptom of depression, negative mood itself has been found to enhance deception detection compared to a positive mood. We did 2 studies to investigate depressive realism effects in the deception of detection. Our first study dealt with the following hypotheses. We expected that depression would be associated with a higher accuracy rate, with a lower truth bias, and a higher accuracy in lies with a positive message. The third one we suggested because of the finding by Elaine and DiPaolo, who only found a higher accuracy in phony reassurances, which we thought might be generalizable to positive messages overall. So maybe if a positive message is actually a lie, we thought that maybe we would find higher effects of the heightened accuracy rates for these positive messages. We also expected the typical findings of depressive realism. It's such that depressed individuals would show a lower competence in their veracity judgments and would also be more accurate when evaluating their own lie detection ability. In this first study, we investigated whether 270 participants that rated 24 statements, half of them truth, half of them a lie, about liking or disliking a movie, meaning positive or negative messages, would be more likely to find truths and lies correctly when considered depressed or dysphoric. As depression screening instruments have been found to have a small overlap in symptoms, we wanted to check whether these findings would be robust. That's why we checked our hypotheses on 3 different depression screening instruments. One instrument did not have a cutoff set for depressed or non-depressed individuals. And as depression is more and more thought to be a dimensional construct, we tested our hypotheses on this instrument with correlations. While on the other instruments, there are clear definitions on when a person is depressed or non-depressed. And that's why we used variance analyses for these instruments. Well, and to our results of our first study, judgment accuracy was not higher. So it was not like we expected. It was actually even lower on the CESD, one of the 3 depression measures. Yeah, but this finding was not a robust finding. It was not found on the other depression screening instruments. Also, as we expect, unlike we expected, there was only on one scale an interaction between depression and statement balance. No. There was no interaction between statement balance and our screening instruments. Except for this one. Sorry. On this one of the 3 instruments, we found an interaction where depressed individuals were even were more likely to have a worse accuracy rating for dislike statements, while there was no difference in the veracity judgments for like statements. So it was in the correct direction, but it was not found on all 3 scales. Okay, truth bias was also not associated with depression on any of the 3 scales. And we also found different results on all 3 depression measures for the rating confidence. Only the 3rd one, the DESC, presented a difference. And there the rating confidence was actually lower. Depression was also not associated with a more accurate performance expectation. One scale found that there was a lower expectation of their performance, but this was also not accurate. In our second study, we added another investigation and we changed some things. We enhanced the sample size. We changed the participant acquisition. In our first study, we had overall low scores of depression. It was left skewed. And we also had a change in the content of statements. It was more close to the study by Lane and De Paulo, as it was about liking or disliking an associate. And moreover, we added another investigation of a self-serving positivity bias. In order to explain that, I need to make another short digression. And that is into the investigation made by Lloyd et al., who investigated racial bias in veracity judgments. And in their studies, they found that participants rated the veracity of statements by black targets more likely as truth than they did for white targets. A very interesting finding, which Lloyd et al. Explained, they found a moderator in the interaction between internal and external motivation to respond without prejudice. So do they want to be unprejudiced for being viewed as unprejudiced by others, or do I want to view myself as unprejudiced? And individuals who primarily were internally motivated to respond without prejudice showed the highest truth bias towards Black individuals. This internal motivation is defined as living up to personally important self-defining egalitarian standards, which can serve as a protection of a positive self-view. So we connected it with the depressive realism hypothesis and said that in this area too, depressed individuals who do not have this bias that is supposed to protect their positive self-view will have a more realistic or unbiased evaluation of truth and lie for Black and white individuals. Here are our hypotheses for the second study, which are almost like in the first study, with the exception of our hypothesis for the racial bias effect, which we expected to be lower in depressed individuals. As I said before, we had a larger sample size in this study, and also we acquired them differently on MTurk, and we actually got higher scores on depression. Again, we used 3 depression measurement instruments and only changed one because the other one wasn't available on English, and we used it in German before. Yeah, this time 16 video statements were rated by these participants, and this time it was about liking or disliking an acquaintance. Yeah, and again, we tested for the IPEP depression measure with correlations, and for the other depression measurement instruments, we made variance analyses. In this study, we also didn't find any enhanced judgment accuracy for depressed individuals on any of the 3 scales. And also, we didn't find a correlation on the IPEP with the statement balance difference, meaning that we made a difference measure and correlated the IPEP with it in order to find whether people are more likely to find to correctly classify the statements for like or for dislike statements. Here's an interaction of balance and the depression measures PHQ-9 and the CESD with the overall accuracy as a criterion. And we did find for the PHQ-9 only a significant effect, which looks really weird on this graphic, as the low depression group was the only group to have a different direction of the valence effect. Okay. So we did find significant differences in truth bias, but actually in the the other direction. The depression measurement scales were positively correlated with the truth bias. So on all three scales, individuals that had symptoms of depression showed a higher instead of a lower truth bias. This was also significantly different for like and dislike statements. I'll come to that first, and after that, I'll come to the race difference. Here you can see the interaction models for the PHQ-9 and the CESD with valence. And as expected, actually in a different direction as the first study, and also in a different direction as we expected, there was a lower truth bias for the negative statements for depressed individuals also. And while we thought that the effect would be greater, so a lower truth bias for positive statements, it was actually the other way around. Okay, but it is an interesting finding that depressed individuals, more mood effect than a realism effect, had a lower difference between negative and positive statements that they rated as truth. Here you can see the effects of depression on target race, or the interaction of target race and depression. This actually aligned with our hypothesis. We found the effect of target race on the truth bias for non-depressed individuals. But this effect diminished with higher depression scores. So on the self-view part of our investigations, we found lower rating confidence on all measures, and also lower but not more accurate performance expectations on all measures. So overall, we did not find any realism effects in the view of the world. Depressed individuals were more likely to show a truth bias than non-depressed individuals, which might be more in line with another explanation for the truth bias, which deals with the cognitive difficulty of actually saying what the other one says is a lie, which considering that depressed individuals are supposed to have reduced cognitive capacities and of some sort, this might actually align. Okay, in the self-view investigation of depressive realism effects, our results are do more align with the negativity explanation of the depressive of depression. But we found the expected effect of depression on racial bias. Still, for future investigations, it might be interesting to see whether this is also something that is happening because of reduced cognitive capacity to actually follow the wish to be more unbiased, or whether it really is a more unbiased approach